This episode is brought to you today by TSE Hustlers League. TSE Hustlers League is an online group coaching program designed to help sellers of all levels. Whether you're brand new to sales or you've been selling for a long time, but find yourself in a rut, you want to be able to improve, want to close more deals, you have to check out the program. Perhaps you're a part of an organization that just doesn't have the proper training and you want to get to the next level. Check out TSE Hustlers League. To find more information, simply go to thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers. It would be an absolute honor to have you join us. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this amazing episode, I have a phenomenal guest. His name is Steve McKee, and he's a president of Wallwork Co. Steve is also an author. He wrote a book called When Growth Stalls, Empower Branding. He was a popular BusinessWeek.com columnist for more than a decade and currently writes a column for Smart Brief on leadership. So dude has been around. He knows a thing or two. He's been quoted in New York Times, USA Today, Forbes, you name it. He has done it, and he is phenomenal. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the irrational, rational customer and what does this mean to each and every one of us as sales professionals and entrepreneurs as we're trying to position ourselves and our companies. You're going to love this stuff, man. Dude is going to rock it. So let's go ahead and dive into the good stuff. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Great to be here.
You know, I am so excited to have you because I know you're going to give us some great insights today as we talk about the rationally irrational customer. I know there's a lot in that and how it can help many of us as sales professionals and entrepreneurs. But before we dive into all that fun stuff, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, Steve?
I'm a consultant, a marketing consultant. I have a firm called McKee, Wallwork and Company. We help stalled, stuck, and stale brands revitalize themselves. And I've also written a couple of books, Power Branding and When Growth Stalls. So I love this topic. Love it a lot.
Well, congratulations on the success you're seeing, and I know you're going to, continue to thrive. And this is precisely why we feel that you'll be a great guest for our podcast, because here's what it comes down to: as sales professionals, we know that marketing and sales they're married. There's a hip connection there, but oftentimes we get it confused. And I think you guys have some more expertise that can help us to better understand the customer. But first off, let's just go into that title, because when we first got connected, I saw that and I was like, man, that's very interesting. Mm-hmm. If we were to break that down, the rationally irrational customer, what is that exactly?
What it relates to is it's sort of a gotcha headline, right? But the idea here is that nobody in any purchasing situation acts completely rationally. And yet that irrationality, if you want to call it that, it's really non-rationality, because irrationality is kind of a pejorative thing. That irrationality can actually be somewhat rational when you peel away the layers and look at it. So what appears to be irrational is actually rational, and that's why we look at people as fully orbed human beings, not merely automatons who, follow equations when they're purchasing something.
So as a sales professional, what are some of the biggest mistakes we usually make when we come towards reaching out to prospects from your side of the house, looking at it?
Sure.
What are some of the things you see?
Well, this will be somewhat intuitive to good sales professionals, but one of the biggest mistakes, especially young sales professionals make, is giving into what we call the fallacy of rationality, which is that if you present your case and it's a good case to somebody, there's really no reason for them to say no. And we all have learned the hard way, anybody who's been in sales for any length of time, that isn't how things work. And that's because people don't make decisions purely rationally. If they did, then A plus B plus C equals D, and you couldn't, mess with that. But that's not how it works in the real world. In fact, what we find is in the advertising industry, where I come from, in the trade magazines, advertising accounts change hands a lot. Yeah. And whenever they interview the client about why they went with a certain agency, they will give a very logical, rational, sensible explanation. And that's never why they did it. That's why they say they did it. They did it because they went to college with the guy, or there was some bond of trust built or something. But it's not cool in a trade magazine to say, oh, we were college roommates.
Yeah. How can we get to that level? I mean, how can sales professionals get to the point where they can understand these irrational decisions that customers make, and to be strong with it? And by the way, first off, I noticed this with a client recently. And he claimed that he's been in sales for over like 30 years, but he did exactly what you said. It was just like, he was like, I did this and nothing happened. I was like, of course
He did. Well, we have a little mnemonic device that we use. It's called CERTS, like the breath mint, CERTS. And the way you can remember that is if you're a good salesman, you want to be so close to your prospects that you could smell their breath. But CERTS stands for context, expectations, risks, trade-offs, and shortcuts. And it's just a little device to get you to think more broadly. So every purchase has a context to think about what context your prospect is operating in. That, whether that's they're in a time crunch or they're in a budget crunch or they're under a lot of pressure from management or it's snowing or whatever. That context often determines expectations, and their expectations may not simply be that the product or service works as advertised, right? They're a lot broader than that. Every purchase is fraught with risk, and so prospects are continually trying to mitigate their risk. In fact, one way of looking at a sale is nothing more than that. It's the elimination of risk or the reduction of risk in somebody's mind. So you want to be thinking about what are their risks and how to mitigate them. In that context of risk, prospects are always making trade-offs. Am I going to trade off the extended warranty for the cheaper price? Or am I going to trade off doing business with you 1,000 miles away versus the guy down the street from me? What have you? There's a lot of trade-offs. And then ultimately, the S stands for shortcuts. When you build trust with a prospect, you become a shortcut for them. Sometimes to the point where, you make a sale and you can maintain that client forever because they trust you. So context, expectations, risks, trade-offs, and shortcuts. Believe me, that's only the beginning of understanding the rationally irrational customer, but it's helpful. It's helpful.
No, it definitely is, because if you can be perfect at understanding individuals, I mean, I would call you, I don't know, you'll be God or something. But at this point, so many of us, we're trying to gain as much knowledge as we possibly can to be able to help clients make those informed decisions. Some might say, well, then the client seems like they already have their mind made up, especially if they're a warm lead. They come to my website already. They already have their mind made up. So it doesn't even matter if I try to do anything. What would you say to someone like that?
I would say, first of all, I don't know when that's ever the case, but their heart is not made up. And, you might think in terms of their mind, but think about their heart as well. If they've come to your website, if they've inquired, if they've reached out to you, if they've agreed to give you an appointment or whatever the case may be, that's a good sign, because that means that you're in the game. Mm-hmm. But that's only that you're in the game. And you have to begin to understand what's beneath the surface. That's why, obviously we'll go to a LinkedIn profile and check out who it is that we're going to be meeting with, right? Yeah. Everybody does that. And you want to understand where they worked before and what their position is and that sort of thing. But you also scroll down to where they went to college, right? To what their interests are, those sorts of things. And if you get all the way down to the bottom of the page with me, for example, and it says that I'm interested in masters swimming because I'm a swimmer. If you start there with me, we're going to have a nice conversation, right? Because that's part of who I am. Doesn't mean you're going to get the sale, but it sure beats starting with, Steve, tell me about what your needs are today, or some silly thing like that. And good salespeople understand this. I'm not telling them anything they don't know. What's crazy is in this world, we've somehow, you mentioned that sales and marketing are joined at the hip. Sales and marketing are really, they're two sides of the same coin. They're more than joined at the hip. And yet in the practical world, we've sort of, they come from different places. And sales and marketing often don't get along inside an organization. And I've never completely understood that, because it's just a continuum, right?
Yeah.
Sales can't happen without marketing, and marketing is pointless without sales.
Yeah, you it's like you said, you can't have one without the other per se. And I remember when I worked, and some of the times when I was the most successful was when I worked in conjunction with my marketing folks. I saw them like my aerial support. They came in and gave me some, direction. It gave me some tactical routes that I should take, some information. Then I was able to go out as a foot soldier and execute, right? And I just imagine trying to do that by myself. And those are the times where I found I had the most difficulties trying to wing it or trying to take advantage, trying to do things on my own. And that doesn't work.
Especially these days when people are entering the sales funnel later. There's so much information available out there on the web and so forth, that whereas a salesperson used to get them at the very top of the funnel at, like when they were first feeling a need, and you could work them all the way down the funnel. Now prospects, they don't want to be bothered. And so they will gather a lot of information, and they will typically enter the sales funnel at a much lower level, which means the top of the funnel there is, the purview of marketing. Before you know somebody's name, before you can have a conversation with them, it's all outbound.
Mm-hmm. is there anything else that the seller can do to help? Well, let's go to this idea of research, because sometimes, at this point, we need to do some kind of preparation prior to the conversation. However, some people say too much preparation is overkill, and I could agree with some of that. But then also, what is that right level? What should we look for if we're trying to connect with this rational customer?
Yeah, part of it depends on the size of the sale and the length of the sale and those sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
Whether to the degree to which it's worth it. But what we're looking for is insight.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for what is it that's going to drive or that could significantly affect this decision. If you're selling a product or service that nobody else has, it's a little bit different. But how many people are in that situation? Usually you're in competition with a acceptable substitute, okay, in the prospect's mind. And so it's really easy for the conversation to go to price or to go to delivery terms or to go to those sorts of things. And that's where it becomes commoditized and you have a problem. What you want to do is look for opportunities to make relationship with the prospect, because people do business with people they like and trust. And they'll come up with their own excuses as to why they paid more or waited longer or you name it for the product, if they like you and if they trust you. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, and I'm a salesman just like anybody else, whenever I'm confronting a prospect, what I'm looking for is, some insight into how they might be making the decision. I may know more about that than they do because I deal with this all the time, whereas this decision's a one-off for them. And I'm looking for something in their bio or something they've written or, a like that they have that would give me some indication as to their humanity. And that's the level on which you want to approach them.
Yeah, and I think there's a book Jeb Blunt wrote around the idea of selling as human, and Dan Pink also wrote another book, again, same idea, that there's a human interaction, there's a human being, like connecting with those folks on a different level. That's where, just not thinking that it's just an executive or it's just a CEO, because in some of our minds, and I can tell you, I had those same ideologies where I just saw them as this figmented, this is a CEO, but not as David or Lisa that has, kids and soccer practice with the kids and all of these other things, right? You know what I mean?
And is jacked up just like you and me.
And is annoyed because they're losing money and they need a solution. And it's like,
and here's something that I tell. So I've told a lot of young people this who are looking for a job. I think it applies in sales. Let me use the sales example. When a company has a need for a product or service, okay, they're feeling some pain. Something's not getting done, or something's not getting done efficiently, or something's not getting done effectively, and they're looking for a solution. They're feeling pain.
Yeah.
So when you appear in their doorway, they desperately want you to be the answer. They don't want you to not be the answer. They want you to be the answer. And if you think about it that way, it changes. If you think about it, instead of you being an antagonistic sort of a thing, is they desperately want you to be the solution, and they're going to be looking for ways that you're not. It might cause you to approach the situation differently, that they want to like you. They want you to win. They want it to work out because they don't want to deal with this problem anymore.
Yeah, they're if we can look at it like that, but I just wish that salespeople sometimes they can, remember that and not just fall short all the time and thinking, I don't know. I think it's more of that habit, building a habit to recognizing to look for stuff like that. It makes it, makes it a lot better performing.
Well, we're all of us get into the mode of trying to close or trying to close deals, and when you get out over your skis on that, you're gonna hurt your trust. You got to get into the mode of Patrick Lencioni, who's a favorite author of mine. He's written some great books, and he has a book called Getting Naked, which is about a sales consultant. I highly recommend it. And what he talks about there is start working for the prospect. Start working before they hire you. Start serving them. Start meeting their needs. Start genuinely, sincerely working for them before they hire you. A lot of times they'll just end up hiring you. Sometimes they won't, but you're still building relationship. You're still investing. You're still building trust. And I think that's really good advice, that even if you're selling if you're not selling a service, if you're selling a product, there's a great deal about it. And there's ways that you can be of assistance and aid and benefit to your prospects, even if they don't buy. And that'll come back in good ways down the road.
Yeah, I've seen that perfect example is my podcast, man. Because even, and I'm sure you see it too with your blog and the content you guys produce and so forth. But whenever I've put out stuff, and I remember one of my clients, he came back and said, he bought something from me because one of them, I thought this was funny. One of them said he felt bad because he's taken, he's listened to my stuff and enjoyed myself over the years. And he probably could have went to anyone else for a sales training course, but he said, I wanted to do something. So I felt I needed to give back to you. And others said, I saw your content and it was just, I like you and I like your community.
Pull that apart. Okay, let's pull both of those apart.
Yeah.
The first one, he said he felt bad. Now, that was an inarticulate way of saying it. What he felt is a sense of obligation because you have given to him over the years, and now he wants to return that. And that's a healthy thing. You didn't make him feel guilty, and I don't think he was saying that. Mm-hmm. But he was feeling a sense of indebtedness and obligation to you, and he wanted to pay you back. In the second case, you said he just liked you. Well, of course, that's how it works. And so, yeah, it's a really good question. Why do you do the podcast? Out of the goodness of your heart? Well, sure. But you've got goals with this podcast. And I think the idea here is if we can start to give away what we have, it will come back to us. Not everyone. Some people are going to take advantage of you, take what they can get and split, but that's their problem, not ours. It's a good way to live.
No, I definitely agree with it. It's an excellent way of living. And I can tell you that I've on the other side too, because in some ways I started doing a podcast and I did it more of a way to give back, but also it was a great way for me to build my education because totally. I was sitting down with folks like yourself and some of these folks who I probably wouldn't get a chance to sit down and have a 30-minute conversation with because of schedule and fees and so forth. But it made it that I was able to get back, but get something from it. And I was able to give back as well to the community. And
see, this gets us back to where we began, Rationally Irrational. Mm-hmm. I could ask you the question that people asked me. I wrote a column for businessweek.com for 10 years. And 2 years into that, it was a monthly column. 2 years in, somebody asked me, is it working? And I thought, okay, that's a really interesting question. And I said, yes, it's working. And they said, how do you know? And I said, I just do, which is a pretty lame answer, right? It wasn't 30 days later that I got a call from a stranger who had been reading my column. We ended up doing business together. Now, 13 years later, we're still doing business together. So the point is, somebody might have said that it was not rational for me to be investing in this column. Somebody might say it's not rational for you to be investing in this podcast. And yet, it is. And I knew it was because somewhere underneath the surface, we understand how people work. And so on the surface, it didn't look rational. It looked irrational, but it's actually quite rational in retrospect. And that's true of so many decisions, virtually every consumer decision we make. You can explain why you bought the last car you bought, but it's probably not for the reasons you thought it was going to be when you entered the car buying process. I read the other day that there's a new minivan out, I think, with 2.3 cup holders for every seat.
No way.
Yeah. No, and think about this. Okay, that's not rational, right? Because why would any seat need more than one cup holder? But I guarantee you that feature is going to sell a lot of minivans. And it doesn't appear rational, but what's rational about it is it means that if you got 3 or 4 kids rolling around back there, they have a lot of options. Mm-hmm. And cup holders can be used for a lot of things, not just holding cups and so forth. So when you explain it, it really is rational, even though on the surface you think that's nuts. No engineer would say, let's put more than one cup holder in per seat. But a marketing person would say, let's do that.
Ooh, Steve is hitting on some good stuff right now. But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and jump straight into the content. You're listening to the Sales Evangelist podcast, and I'm your host, your mentor, your coach, Mr. Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. Okay, so you heard me talk about it at the beginning of the episode, and you've heard about it once or twice before, but TSE Hustlers League is an online group coaching program I have, and let me tell you how it actually got started. When I was new to sales, I didn't have a sales system or a sales process to follow. I went to a company, they put us in a program, and it was amazing. After going through a 6-week training program, I started to see a huge difference in the way that I was selling, and I started to actually close more deals, right? But then I started to slide a little bit, going back into my old ways. The company we went through the training with actually had a program for each Friday where we would go back in and we would get proper training with a group of other sellers in different industries. We had accountability, and it was absolutely amazing. Because of that added boost, I became one of the top performing sellers in our organization. And this is why I have TSE Hustlers League. It is designed the same way to help you, whether you're new to sales or you've been selling a long time, to get into the top position and become a top performing seller, close more deals. If you want to learn more, if you want to join us for our upcoming semester beginning here in January, go to thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers. We're only taking a limited number of individuals. But again, go to thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers. it would be an honor to have you join us. Now, as we dive back into the second half of this episode, Steve's going to continue to outline to us this concept of the irrational, rational customer. I'm telling you, man, this stuff is amazing. So sit back and get your pens and Evernotes ready, and let's go back and dive into it. You know, that's interesting. There's and it gets, everything just always ties back. When you say it like this now, you're making me think even more, like some more of the things that I've done. I'm thinking about some of the purchases that I've made and why I made those decisions and why I made those purchases. And the more I listen to you and I talk this through, and it's stuff that I know, but it's just like, holy crap, I really thought that I was making a rational decision on that.
Well, and you know what? In retrospect, it may be. It's just that it wasn't. We often say that people don't know why they do what they do. Mm-hmm. We don't. And the purchase process can change the purchase process. That's one to wrap your head around. The purchase process itself can change the purchase process. That happens all the time because going in, especially to a big purchase, whether it's a consumer purchase like a car or a purchase for your company, you don't know what all the factors are going to be. You don't know what all the dynamics are. I saw an ad yesterday that I'm a runner, and I saw an ad on my phone, a little banner ad. It said, "How fast can you run a mile?" I said, okay, that's intriguing. I clicked on it. And it was for an insurance company that said, if you run under a 9-minute mile, we can get you a discount on your life insurance. You know what I did with that piece of information?
What's that?
I sent it to my life insurance agent. And I said, what's up with this? And he doesn't work for that company. No. So the idea being, you think you buy life insurance a certain way. And here comes a company that introduces a new consideration. Hey, if you can run a 9-minute mile. And all of a sudden it changes the purchase process. That happens all the time. And an enterprising salesperson working with an enterprising marketing person or people can create those advances. And see, that's the point. That's how we get innovation. That's how we move forward. That's how we keep from making the sale about price.
Yeah.
Commoditizing it. Who's selling harder. How many times have you heard that?
You're not doing it good enough. Sell harder.
Sell harder. Don't sell harder. It'll get worse. Sell smarter.
And it comes back to a philosophy that I've learned over the years that in order to be successful, do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. And
the George Costanza theory.
Oh, it is?
Oh, that's George from Seinfeld. He said, do the opposite of what you think you should do. Yeah.
No, but so often, especially like the rational thing that we think we should do, especially as a life insurance agent, I need to have a middle-aged guy and I need to have him and his wife in a little ad and saying, are you protected? Or, have a couple, two kids and a lady standing over a grave. Are you protected for, after death? Somebody listed as life insurance, they're probably, oh man, that's a great ad. Let me go and push that. But again, that's not necessarily what's going to push them to go back to the irrational stuff. Don't do what everyone else is doing. Think the provocative way.
And in that industry, there's been a lot of advances. So there was a time in that industry where you couldn't do humor. Geico comes along and does humor. And then State Farm tries. And then Allstate comes along with Mayhem and they're excoriated. They're saying you're crossing the line. You can't do that. Guess what? Mayhem has done wonders for Allstate because it's a different way of looking at it.
Did you hear about that the ad they did recently? Somebody and I was having a conversation about that. I think it was last Super Bowl, what they did when they went to they had a couple and they said they won something and they went inside of their house and basically took pictures or whatever and replicated their whole house. And then they brought this couple to a Super Bowl game, and then at halftime, they played their house getting robbed, but it was the stage room. And they put it live on Twitter and social media, and it was, this couple was like, oh! And it was like, don't go ahead and post all your stuff. And that was the whole message by it. When you go on vacation, don't post and tell burglars your house is open. But it was a irrational thing, but it went huge for them. But he just thought about the idea what you said with Mayhem. They did something totally different.
Yeah. Well, and I give advice to young people with their resumes, and this is a sales thing, right? You're trying to sell themselves. And in college, they'll give you a class that'll teach you how to do a resume. And as a result, everybody's resume looks the same.
I know.
So
right?
I say to kids, pay really close attention in that class and learn how to do it. And then look for wise ways to violate it, to do it. Because that's what's going to, wise ways, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to create differentiation in people's minds instead of just following the formula. Same is true in sales. We worked with a client once that asked us to do a piece of sales collateral for them. We came back to them with you're not going to believe this, a piece of collateral that had a $250 unit cost. What? $250. And that's what and we almost got thrown out of the room, but they listed And long story short, the particular category that it was in, when they made the sale, it was justifiable. And that piece of collateral was so incredibly standout. Obviously, you couldn't not pay attention to it, that it ended up, the ROI on it was really, really high compared to a $5 brochure or a $1 brochure, because we were thinking differently and it made sense. Kudos to that client for being willing to take that risk.
They had a pretty decent return then, huh?
They had a terrific return. They had to measure it differently. Now, they didn't print as many, right?
Yeah.
They printed 250 of them, I think, to start, and they used them judiciously, but they worked tremendously well. It's just a different way of thinking about it.
No, I absolutely love that idea. One thing you shared, and I just want to tweak back on this and before we get to a close up here, but you mentioned wise way to violate it. I'm gonna keep that and borrow that term.
Yeah, but go ahead.
The Marcus Sheridan. You're familiar with Marcus Sheridan, right? Yeah. So Marcus, one of the things that I saw, he had a post a while back. He was having kids apply, or some folks apply for like marketing students, but everyone sent in a paper resume, and he was like, "Hold on. In the days of social media and digital marketing, and that's what you're going to do, why am I getting paper resume? What? No one sent me like a video of themselves saying, hey, Marcus, this is what I can do and this is what I'm capable of." And it's something that's, a wise way to violate it. Yeah, you probably can send them a, paper, but what if you were sent a paper and say, hey, check out this link. This is where my resume is at. I don't know, something different.
Something different.
Yeah.
It's a great way. We go as simple as business cards. Our business cards are printed on really heavy stock.
Yeah.
And every time I hand one out, somebody does a double take on it. And their first reaction is, how can you afford this business card? And I'm like, are you nuts? You just noticed my business card. And instead of paying, whatever it was, 1/10 of a cent per card, I'm paying 2/10 of a cent per card. It's totally worth it. And yet we get in this mode of, we got to print them cheap. No, your calling card is your calling card, for crying out loud. Make it special.
Imagine if Batman didn't have the light. Imagine if his calling card. He's gonna what if he had it on a light pole? Just put it up on the light pole, and I'll go find the light pole.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. I like that, man. It was irrational. I love it, Steve.
Very good.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. If there's one major piece of advice that you'd like folks to leave after all of our discussion today, what's one major piece you'd like them to walk away with?
I think that the discussion about humanity. Remember that these are humans and they want to like you.
Love it, man. Now, if we want to go ahead and connect with you, because now we became friends now and, want to learn more about this Steve guy, what's the best place for us to go to find you?
The easiest thing to do is go to whengrowthstalls.com. Whengrowthstalls.com, that's the name of my first book, and that'll get you right to our resource. And we have tons of posts and articles about this sort of stuff that you can just swim in.
Oh, man. Well, we love it, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. We'll go ahead and put that stuff in our show notes. Sure appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thank you.
I'm telling you, Steve knows a thing or two, and he gave us some great insights today, some great ideas, and it proved to us, it may have validated some of the things you already know about selling, right? And about how you make decisions. But sometimes we really don't think, we just do things, right? And it's important for us to understand that's when it comes to our prospects. Sometimes we get all hung up on, well, we have to, it's because of this or because of that. Well, it's probably because of an irrational reasoning. So think about that, think a little bit deeper. I would love for you to connect with Steve because he has a wealth of knowledge, some great information that you can take and apply. I'm going to put some links back in the show notes so you can get access to him. You can find all the details by going to our website, thesalesevangelist.com/the-word episode number 758. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/the-word episode number 758. You're going to absolutely love the great content that Steve has and his team. You know what? Besides that, you can connect with him on social media as well. He has some great information. And again, great individual for you to know. As always, I share content like this. I share guests like Steve because the problem that I find is that oftentimes we keep doing the same old and want to see amazing results. But that doesn't happen. We have to get outside of our comfort zone. So Steve gave us some ideas today. I want you to take it and apply it as it suits your business. You may not be able to apply everything, but apply the principles in the way that you position yourself and your company. And it will help you tremendously. Now, overall, I do this because I want to help you. I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. But most importantly, I want you to go out each and every day and do big things.